Hello! It's great to see you all again. So far, there is no way to travel through time efficiently. No spacecraft can yet reach the speed of light, or bring humans close enough to a black hole to exploit time dilation effects and travel hundreds or thousands of years into the future. Even if that were to actually happen, the price to pay would be too high. If you traveled 100 years into the future, it would mean that when you returned, everyone you ever knew, your family, your loved ones, would be dead. If you traveled thousands of years, entire civilizations might have changed or vanished by the time you came back. This is a type of time travel that F5M temporarily calls inefficient. It works, but it's too costly and impractical. But what if F5M told you we are looking in the wrong direction? What if time travel isn't necessarily a physical journey, but rather a shift of the mind from the past to the future and back? That way, travelers could still reunite with their loved ones, and the journey would truly be meaningful. Of course, we would have to solve a mess of paradoxes related to time travel, but that is a topic for another video. Today, F5M wants to tell you the story of a man who allegedly traveled to the year 3906 and recorded everything. Let's listen to what the future world is like, as told by someone who witnessed it with his own eyes. In May 1921, Paul Amadeus Dienach was a Swiss teacher teaching German at a university in Greece. During a class, he felt dizzy and fell into a coma a few hours later. When he woke up, the hospital room had changed. Everyone was wearing strange outfits and speaking a language that he, a language teacher, could not understand. One of the doctors managed a few broken words of German and told Dienach that he was actually Andrew Northam, a famous physics professor who had been in an accident. Dienach said he didn't know who Northam was. However, when he looked in the mirror, he saw a completely strange face. Dienach panicked and began to cry. He thought he was dead or had gone insane. He tearfully explained that he was just a language teacher from Switzerland and had no idea what was happening. Upon hearing Switzerland, someone asked him what year it was. Dienach said it was 1921. An elderly doctor stepped forward and said that it was actually the year 3906. Dienach, of course, did not believe it. But when the window curtains were drawn and Dienach saw buildings taller than the clouds and vehicles gliding past the window, he fainted from sheer shock. A few days later, when Dienach could walk again, he was visited by two elderly men, the electors, individuals with deep and comprehensive understanding of the human spirit and mind in this world. They explained that Dienach might have experienced a rare spiritual phenomenon called a consciousness shift. When Andrew Northam was injured in the accident, he was clinically dead for 15 minutes. Doctors had chilled his brain and successfully revived his heart. The electors believed that was the moment Paul Dienach's mind was transferred into Andrew Northam's body, 2,000 years into the future. They explained that time is not a linear path. Every person's consciousness exists at all times and in all places. In other words, unlike the physical body, the mind can travel through time without limits under special circumstances. The electors called for Stephen, Andrew Northam's close friend, and asked him to keep Dienach's true identity a secret and help him recover his memory. They believed this would reverse the mental state and return Dienach to his own era. In the following days, while Stephen worked hard to help Dienach learn about modern society, the reluctant time traveler was only interested in the past. During his first 2 weeks in the future, Dienach could not sleep. He stayed awake all night, reading books and learning the new language tirelessly. Dienach described something called the Regan Swagger, a handheld device with moving 3D images that glowed in the dark with sound, music, and storytelling. Back in the 1920s, the most modern learning device Dienach had ever encountered was a book. The first microchip wouldn't be born until 1971, 50 years later. Either Dienach had a very vivid imagination, or he truly did travel through time and saw a 3906 version of an iPad. The electors were high-level entities. Somehow, they locked 20th century world history away from Dienach. They didn't want him to return and become a prophet, potentially disrupting the timeline. Sounds like a movie, doesn't it? So what about the rest of history? Using a search tool, similar to Google, that people used in 3906, Dienach studied thousands of years of human history. 2000 to 2300, humans struggled with overpopulation and conflict. 2204, we colonized Mars, which was a bit later than NASA and Elon Musk's calculations. 2264, after 60 years, the population on Mars reached 20 million. 2265, however, a meteor strike destroyed the entire Mars colony, permanently crushing human aspirations for space expansion. 2309, a nuclear war broke out and lasted for 80 years, wiping out most of the human population. Eventually, only the Baltic and Scandinavian nations and their languages survived. 2396, a new world government called Restart was established, marking the end of ancient history and the beginning of modern history. 2023, a world leader named Thorhill initiated a new economic system. Each person would work for 40 years and then retire. Gradually, technology and automation developed to the point that when Paul Dienach arrived in 3906, people only needed to labor for 2 years in their entire lives. That's right. You didn't mishear that. In the future world, children are educated from a young age and start working at 17. Thus, the youth of the future retire at age 19. Each person only needs to work hard for 2 years. Then they retire and do whatever they wish. By the beginning of the 40th century, all material needs, food, clothing, shelter, education, and even entertainment were met. Humans lived in a society where one worked according to their ability and received according to their needs. Some still chose to pursue careers like Andrew Northam becoming a physicist. But you could live in leisure as long as you completed your 2 years of labor, and all your needs would be met by society. This is the ideal model of socialism. In reality, this model is hard to implement because society always has people with low productivity who want to enjoy benefits without contributing. For this society to work, everyone, and I emphasize everyone, must work for the common good. Human nature is inherently selfish. We always want the benefit for ourselves and the disadvantage for others. But in the future, we are no longer just human. According to what Dienach found, starting around the year 3000, a strange phenomenon called the pain of enlightenment began to occur in humans. Some people had a new type of sense activated. Their brain structure suddenly changed. They evolved and developed a new sense. It was like an instantaneous enlightenment, allowing them to immediately perceive a new realm of existence and opening up an infinite amount of spiritual knowledge. They called this new sense supervision. Supervision brought humans feelings of extreme happiness and mental peace. It was described as divine joy, the acceptance of death, and the letting go of all mundane material things. All these emotions came in a rush, causing panic, and everyone who experienced the pain of enlightenment died with an ecstatic, satisfied expression. Everything changed on September 6, 3382, when a 76-year-old man named Alexis Valky experienced the pain of enlightenment and survived. From then on, everyone survived the process. With the new sense unlocked, Homo sapiens evolved into Homo occidentalis novus, or the new Western man. As human nature changed, we no longer had disputes, selfishness, or the need to step on others to survive. Instead, we began to work for the whole. Currency and laws were no longer necessary once we were free from greed, anger, and ignorance. Selfishness became a concept studied as a legacy of Homo sapiens, a less evolved species. Through Stephen, Dienach also learned that aliens are real, and they weren't actually the invading races we once feared. It turns out they had also gone through the Enlightenment process and decided to let us walk our own path, intervening only a few times when humanity was on the verge of self-destruction. And if you think Paul Amadeus Dienach's Adventure to the Future was just a science fiction novel, you would be wrong. It was actually a romantic love story. When Paul Dienach was a young man, he fell in love with a girl named Anna from his village. Though they loved each other dearly, their families forbade the relationship. Classic. During their last meeting, they sat on a hill covered in white flowers. Before parting, Anna promised that if they ever met again, she would make a flower wreath for him to place on her head. But Paul never saw Anna again, and this haunted him for the rest of his life. Back in 3906, Dienach met a woman named Sylvia. One day, they traveled together in a flying vehicle that could go anywhere on Earth almost instantly. They spent the day talking and exploring, eventually stopping by chance at the very hill where his past love had ended. On that day, flowers were also in full bloom everywhere. Before leaving, Sylvia made a flower wreath, handed it to Paul, and asked him to place it on her head. Dienach stood frozen. He believed that Anna's soul had been reborn in Sylvia's body to fulfill the promise made 2,000 years ago. That night, for the first time after living in the future for a year, Dienach fell into a deep sleep. He woke up in Greece in 1922, after a year-long coma. The story you just heard was translated and edited by Georgios Papahasis, a Greek jurist and Dienach's favorite student. Papahasis received hundreds of handwritten pages from Paul Dienach shortly before he died of tuberculosis in 1924. At first, Papahasis thought it was just a sci-fi novel, but gradually he realized it seemed to be Dienach's actual diary. The diary detailed Dienach falling into a coma in 1921 and waking up in 1922. He spent an entire year in the future and recorded everything he saw. Setting the romance aside, let's get to the most important question. Is this early, time-traveling love novel real? Personally, I hope it is. But if you think imagining hundreds of pages with names, places, dates, and fictional technologies is convincing proof that a person traveled to the future, then wouldn't every science fiction writer, including the creator of Doraemon, also be a time traveler? Paul Dienach was in a coma for an entire year. That is plenty of time for a person to create a vivid and detailed future world within their dreams. Or it's possible that Paul Amadeus Dienach was simply a creation of Georgios Papahasis himself and never actually existed. In fact, there are no official records of Paul Dienach's existence in Switzerland or Greece. The photo often used to illustrate Dienach in many videos is actually Daniel Lowhill, a thief arrested in New Zealand in 1908. Georgios Papahasis, the man who translated and published the story, claimed that Dienach fought for Germany in WWI and changed his name before coming to Switzerland. Therefore, no one knows his real name. Nope. Papahasis also explained that these notes were written in German and were confiscated by the military during World War II while Papahasis was living in Greece. The convenient disappearance of the original manuscript makes many skeptical about the story's authenticity. Furthermore, if you notice, many things trending in the 21st century are completely absent from the story, such as social media, the internet, Bitcoin, or artificial intelligence. It seems Dienach's or Papahasis's imagination was limited by the era in which they lived. The truth may be buried forever, and perhaps we will never know. However, there are still many things in this story that give us pause, such as the possibility of traveling to the future via the human mind, or the vision of a beautiful world when humanity evolves in consciousness. What do you all think about this story? Leave a comment below. If you found this story fascinating, don't forget to like the video. If you enjoy hearing strange and mysterious stories, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. For now, goodbye, and see you again.